things are sinking.
Now,
which I didn't realise was happening.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting enough, that is the area that we're going to be focused on primarily. So if we just take a little look at this. So what I was doing with the watch, this is your swim here, this 200 metres. And we can ignore all the data and the speed that we're swimming at. But what I'm interested in is this here, right? So what the watch is doing is using the accelerometers and gyros built within here and using the patented algorithm that we've created, we can actually use it to break down 6 different aspects of the stroke.
That's very cool.
So this is now looking at the pitch of the hand. So the gentleman beforehand, Jeremy, he had a huge thumb first entry into the water, so he scored 1.2. Yours is 3.4 and 3.9 on the right here. If we then look at the arm recovery action, so what your arms are doing over the top of the water, we can see that the left arm, and we'll see this properly on the video in a moment, we can see it's quite sort of low, swinging around the side. But then you're scoring some really good marks here for how you're pulling through, for example. So 5 out of 5. This is where the
I thought it was a bit of a weakness actually. I feel like I kind of sookied off a bit on the.
No, it's actually pretty good. But the key thing, and we're going to see this clear as day, and like you say with your wife, she's already seen it on the video, is how much the hand is crossing over in front of the head. Now, the problem that this creates is, firstly, you can see here it's slowing you down by about 4 seconds at 100 metres, causing you to be burning up 8% more energy than you need to. And this is the real risk, though, is the risk of snaking. So actually snaking down the pool and also creating quite a scissor kick.
I think I do that quite a bit in the open water because I'm swimming sort of from Cot to North Cot, doing that kind of Cot North Cot.
Yes, yeah.
Run, and I'm all over the shop.
All over the shop, yeah, exactly right. So what we'll do then is we'll take a look at the proper video. The watch there just gives you that little bit of extra, or gives me that extra little bit of feedback. But for yourself, monitoring on a day-to-day basis is quite useful. So let's just drop this in here and let's just check this out. So if we just get you started here in real-time speed to begin with, and we'll zoom right the way in. Here we go. Cool, all right.
This is great.
The thing with this is what we can see straight away is if we zoom right the way in and we look at the arm action over the top of the water, we can see that left arm that showed on the thing of being quite low. And then what we can see is the hand then places onto the water and sort of almost lands into the water a bit flat like this.
Fingertip entry.
Exactly right, rather than the fingertip entry. But what we can't really determine from this angle is whether or not we're crossing over. So the
actually, just having a look at that stroke there, I can see with the right hand that I'm actually thinking about that.
Yes,
and I
absolutely.
think my right hand entry may be a little bit more fingertips first.
It is, exactly right.
It's
definitely better on that side. And if we watch it here, so we can see the right one crossing over, but as per the guru there using the watch, you can really see how much that left hand wraps around in front of the head. So the problem this creates, as it said on the guru, is it's creating the bit of scissoring, or a bit of snaking I should say, but it's also then having the impact of creating scissoring with the legs. So watch what happens here, look. So as that hand cuts across in front of the head and then eventually straightens itself out, the legs sort of stabilise by kicking out wide there, Craig, and that's creating a lot of drag, and that's slowing us down quite significantly. So the way to look at this is not to think, oh, I've got 2 problems. He's told me I've got a crossover and I've got this big scissor kick. You want to be looking at this as just really one problem. It's the crossover that's causing the scissor kick.
Oh, okay. So sorry, just to be clear, when you say scissor kick, like opening
as
too
in
much.
opening too much, basically.
And opening wide.
I'm opening wide, because when we go underneath the water, what you're going to see here is
you mean like that?
Exactly right. So the legs are not only are they scissor kicking laterally, but they're also scissor kicking vertically as well. And because we're doing that at the back of the stroke there, they're straight. They're definitely. It's probably taking that little bit of feedback from the guy up in Scarborough, but my concern here is not so much about they're straight or whether they're bent, it's about how far apart they are, both laterally and vertically, and this just creates a lot of drag. And if we take a little look here at a bit of an analysis of an elite swimmer, so we'll bring in Shelley Taylor-Smith actually from here in Perth, and what's beautiful about Shelley's stroke and ironic at the same time is when I filmed this, it's about 2010 is this video footage. She said, "Oh, don't film my stroke. I've got a terrible stroke." And I said, you can't have a terrible stroke. You won 7 world marathons,
Yeah,
championships.
there's got to be something good about
There
it.
was something good about it, exactly right.
Plenty.
But she was saying like, okay, well, everyone's critiqued me that I look like I'm swinging my arm over the top. I look like I'm hardly kicking at all.
Yeah.
But if we just draw this little tube around you, just there, so we can see the top line there represents the surface of the water. This line represents the body line, so the chest and the hips, etc.
Yeah.
What we want is we want the body to stay within that tube.
Right, yeah.
And at the moment, we can see that the foot and the leg here is really quite a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
So if we watch Shelley from the same position, oops, I should go back to where you were. So that's the legs.
It's amazing
legs
the
there,
extent
yeah.
to which you don't look the way you think you do.
No, and that's why I was asking those sort of loaded questions beforehand. What do you think you're going to see? Because when we watch Shelley here, look at that.
Yeah.
And if we just bring you up at the top, we'll see just how much deeper the legs are going.
Yeah.
And because of that depth, it creates a lot of additional drag.
Yeah.
And that's why you're getting to the end of that feeling so tired.
Yeah.
And why Shelley, literally swim for 70 or 80 kilometres like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, she's been doing it all her life and a fantastic swimmer. But the point really is to identify here that you don't need to have a really strong propulsive leg kick to be an efficient swimmer, especially over distance. But you do need the legs to actually stay.
Is it hip driven? Is that what you'd call
very, very hip driven sort of thing.
Yeah.
So kicking through from the hips there. Sometimes when people are talking about hip driven, they're talking a little bit more about where the rotation comes from.
Okay, yeah.
But certainly she's got her legs very straight and
the
deep.
amplitude of her kick is small.
Amplitude is
yeah.
tiny.
Yeah.
Very, very good word, actually. Very good way of actually looking at it. Whereas with yourself here, the amplitude is quite large.
Yeah.
But it's quite large not because you're... It's
flailing about like a drowning man.
That's right. And it's large not because you're trying to do this, but because you're trying to compensate for what's happening up at the front.
Exactly, yeah.
So if we fix the crossover, that's going to fix the legs.
Right, okay, well that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, exactly right. And one of the things that most people fall foul of when they're doing stroke correction is they end up thinking about 10 or 11 different things all at the same time.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah. And
you think on this thing and then 3 other things fail.
Yeah,
completely.
totally. And again, watching videos online and stuff, they're helpful, but until you know what is relevant to you, it's difficult to understand.
And I think
exactly.
swimmers are more idiosyncratic probably than
for sure. Very much so, exactly right.
Yeah.
But if we had to say, okay, what is the one thing, let's say we only had 3 minutes left of the session, what is the one thing that we do in those 3 minutes to fix the majority of what we see? And that's the one thing there, is that movement pattern with the hand. So before we move forward, let's look at what this should look like, and then I'll show you how we'll fix it.
It's interesting, quite amazing because I'm conscious of that, and so I was okay, right, try and railroad tracks,
Exactly.
hands out in front, try not to cross over, and
that's exactly right. And we'll look at this in just 1 second. If we just bring in this this swimmer here. So Jono Van Hazel, another local swimmer, So this particular video has got 4 million views on YouTube. So we put it out for
100 of them.
You've bought about 100 of them, exactly right. The thing that people like about this video is, firstly, he looks very smooth. The rails that you're just talking about there, you can see that those arms extend straight down the pool. Some people even think, is this an animation?
Yeah, it looks he's a bit machine-like.
Bit machine-like, and it's just perfect, basically. Now, Jono's parents both swim with me in the squad, and his mum, Annette, she looks like this when she's swimming.
Really,
so it's maybe some of this is a little bit hereditary.
Physiological
as well, exactly right.
Nature of his body.
That's right. But when we watch him from the bird's eye view, now, Jono's 6'2.5", and he always reminds me of the half-inch. When you see him swimming, he looks every bit that long because all the energy is going forwards. Now, both you and I are quite a bit shorter than Jono, but because of the way this hand wraps around in front of the head, it makes you appear even shorter in the water. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to get those hands lengthening forwards like Jono's doing. And the benefit of that there, Craig, is going to make it a lot more efficient because we're not going to be weaving around in the water. It's going to take pressure off the shoulders as well. So the gentleman that I just had beforehand, I mentioned that he was going into the water thumbs first on the left and then really crossing over on the right. And I said to him, this is a precursor for shoulder pain. And he said straight away, I said, I can't believe you know that. And I said, well, yeah, because it's going into the water incorrectly there. And he said, I've already got shoulder pain. And so in an instant, he knew that, firstly, he knew what I was talking about, or knew that I knew what I was talking about, but secondly, he knew that there's a solution then to actually be able to fix that problem. So with what we've got here, we almost want to look at this in two ways. We want to look at the performance benefits of correcting this, but then also the longevity of swimming as well, to stay injury-free. Exactly right, you know, so that's something we want to do. And again, with Jono down the bottom here, we've got beautiful alignment. Now, we can see him doing it. He makes it look very easy. Swimming here at 1 minute 11 per 100. His effort level is steady. All these nice facts and figures. Let me show you here the incorrect way of fixing what you're doing, in my opinion. So a lot of people would look at this and go, and well, you've even seen it yourself. You saw, your wife said she'd seen yourself crossing over in front of the head. Now, a lot of people would look at this and go, okay, Craig's crossing over in front of his head. He needs to take his arm wider. And what they would actually say about this is, if we just get rid of those other confusing lines, they'd almost place you on a clock face. And what they'd say is, look, here's the clock face. We've got 12 o'clock here, 6 o'clock there, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So if that hand's crossing over in front of the head, the instruction might be, hey Craig, if you can enter into the water at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock over here.
Like an overcompensating
thing, exactly right. The problem is that 9 times out of 10, when I re-see somebody again who's maybe been instructed to go wider like that, suddenly they're massively wide. And it causes just as many problems. It makes the stroke too flat in the water with very little rotation. So before we go down that path, and I'm not sort of poo-pooing that idea completely, because in some extreme cases, it can actually work for people to actually think about going a bit wider. But we don't know yet how, whether or not, if we fix this the easy way, which in my opinion is to try to get you to find what neutral should feel like. So when that hand actually extends straight forward, like him with the tracks there, basically getting the hands going forward. So we've actually got an exercise which we call the javelin drill, which will help us do this today. So when we do the javelin drill, we're going to wear a single pointy paddle on the lead hand. The pointy paddle's got a strap for the middle finger and a keel on the underside. These paddles will come flying off your hand if you go into the water crossing in front of the head. So in the context of the drill that we're going to do, we're going to kick on the side. We're going to think about drawing the shoulder blades together and back, really good posture. And then when we go into the freestyle, you'll notice I've only got one paddle on the left hand. I'm only breathing away from the paddle. And the reason I've only got one paddle on and I'm only breathing to the opposite side is because we can see in your stroke, look, the most obvious time when you cross over with that left arm is when you breathe into the right. And the reason that happens in most people's stroke is that when you're breathing, if you think about it, we already know that you're running out of air a little bit. So when you go to take a breath, the last thing you're likely to be thinking about is his arm, and you're just going to be thinking about sucking in the air. So what
I should point out there that I've just kind of have got into the discipline of bilateral breathing. I couldn't even do it because left is my preferred side, and I found I just fell apart if I tried to breathe on right. So I've got to the point now where I can do it pretty consistently. But it's still, I'm only just
elementary sort of thing. And the thing with this though is that it's great that you've already taken that step. Now knowing that, what we can do is we can actually, one of the reasons why people feel uncomfortable breathing to their least favourite side is because they have like a big crossover and it just throws everything off. So if we can get you to straighten this left arm out, it's going to make breathing to that new side a lot better as well. And like I say, we're going to achieve that today by utilising this drill here. It's not complicated. It's actually quite a simple way of doing it, and I can foresee us making some significant improvement on that in a very short space of time. What's also useful about what we'll do is we'll use this little radio headset today. So I'll be talking to you. You'll still be able to have your earbuds in. I'll talk to you. It'll come up through the like bone conduction. And by being able to talk to you, I'll be able to tell you when you've got it right. And then equally I'll say, right, now let's go back to doing this, and you'll feel the difference very significantly straight away there. Okay, so let's get rid of the bottom video, and now let's go back to yourself here. And what we're going to do now, Craig, we're going to go underneath the water, and we're going to just have a closer look now at how you're pulling through. So we saw that the legs are kicking vertically displacement and also laterally as well. But what we want to see here is this next part. So at the first part of the stroke, as do most people, they sort of lean on this arm a little bit to take a breath in.
Yep.
But let's see how it then affects the way you're pulling through. So in this position, there we go. That's why you were scoring so well on the Guru.
Yeah.
Remember in fact, let's just bring it straight back up here again. Look. So on
sort of bending the elbow.
Yeah, bending the elbow, yeah. And the thing with this is most people would consider the pull through to be quite an advanced aspect of the stroke here. Yeah. So we're getting that nice position there with that left arm, with that right arm as well. You can see that just happening right there. But what's curious about this, notice how, because we only used the watch for 200 meters, these spots haven't really formed a nice hot spot yet. They're sort of scattered a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a couple over here, and there's certainly a section over here, and same for this one here. If you just rewind it a fraction and watch the right hand, look at how different the right hand looks to the left.
Yep.
Now, the reason is the hands are crossed in front of the head, the hand is up like this, we're using the arm like a lever, and as soon as we start to push down on the water with this arm, it throws off your ability to pull through correctly. Yeah. So on that particular stroke, the arm is a bit too straight, too much turbulence coming off the hand there, and it's simply because, not because you've got a dodgy right arm or anything like that, but simply because you're using that arm like a lever to lift yourself up. So if we go to the next stroke, look at that. Really good.
Textbook.
Yeah. Textbook, exactly right. That one not so good.
No.
All right. And then we watch this next one here. Very good. Hardly any bubbles coming off that hand as well, which is great. Now, this is the one that I'm interested in here, look, because when you're not breathing, it's definitely better. It's a little bit of swept across underneath the body, and that's what the heat map was showing us beforehand. Yeah. But then we see this next one, which we haven't seen yet, this left hand. This one really cuts across in front of the head. The elbow then sort of falls in the water. We push down. In fact, we're actually moving the water, not just down, but sort of outwards as well. Yeah. And then the hand sweeps across there underneath the body. So there's a really easy way of fixing this. And that easy way is saying, Craig, don't breathe. Okay. Because
breathing's handy though.
Doctors recommend it as well. Yeah, exactly right. The reason I'm saying that, a bit tongue-in-cheek obviously, is that when we're swimming along, most of us, when we don't breathe, can get it close to being right because there's nothing else to concentrate on other than seeing what you're seeing. But as soon as we go to take a breath in, suddenly all the focus goes on breathing in. It falls off the stroke, and that's when those errors actually start to present
Well, interesting, all my swimming, I mean, before I was swimming, doing this North Cot thing, but with the mask and snorkel, so I'm just head down the whole time.
Totally.
So now I'm tilt to breathe.
And with that head and with that snorkel, actually, one of the duty managers who came to me on the pool deck yesterday said, "I'm considering wearing a snorkel," and he wanted my opinion or approval. He said, "Would that be considered cheating? Would you think I'm cheating?" And he doesn't swim in the group; he just swims by himself. I said, "Well, firstly, go bananas, use a snorkel, find out what it feels like." I said, "However, what it'll do is it'll limit the need to take a breath in, and that will actually highlight or mask any errors that you might have in the stroke." In some ways, that's maybe what you wanted to do, but if you're trying to develop the stroke, getting rid of the snorkel and actually addressing the issue.
I've been very deliberate about not using the mask and snorkel at all, and just forcing myself to swim and try and correct little things as I see them, watch videos and
exactly right.
Nothing compares to this though. This is actually seeing what you're doing and having a well-informed critique as you're giving.
Correct. Yeah. And again, when you're not breathing, the arm pull through is much better. Yeah. This one's going to look really good.
I've got the capacity for good technique.
You have, exactly right. You absolutely have. And again, it just goes back to that idea. The big ticket item is this crossing over in front of the head. But the even bigger ticket item, if there is such a thing, is the hand crossing in the head when you're breathing. So if we can fix that particular phase of the stroke, not crossing over when you're breathing.
Having my head under and just, because I've become so accustomed to using a mask and snorkel, it's a totally different breathing thing. So this way I get a bit panicky under the water. I've been trying that bubbling thing, where you sort of exhale and just sink to the bottom.
Yes.
Which is quite good. So...
and you can sort of see from this position, just on that train of thought, that, and there's no right or wrong on this. But when you are exhaling at the moment, Craig, it's primarily from your nose. you might want to experiment having a go exhaling a little bit more from the mouth.
Yeah.
Some people feel like you can regulate it better, some people not. Ultimately,
I have a sort of block, deviated septum.
Yeah, me
type
too,
thing.
actually. Yeah,
so
yeah.
I find if I breathe out my nose, it stops water getting up my nose.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So,
Yeah. Don't be afraid to add a little bit from the mouth well,
yeah.
even. Sort
Do
of
you
thing,
mean
yeah,
because getting more out more quickly, or
what it's going to do is that feeling of, as you said, that almost like panicky feeling, when it's almost it almost seems contrary to how you'd think the body would respond. Most people think that when they're swimming, the thing that's limiting them is the ability to get air in.
Yep.
But if you're not blowing air out properly underneath the water, then you're never going to be able to take a full satisfying breath of air in, because you're only then utilising the lungs like this. It's like a little bit of a blowout, and then it's a and then it's a and then so all the sudden the whole thing becomes like this, as opposed to it actually being more of a this is where the mouth might help you a little bit.
Well, I found the bubble breathing that you say in some videos. Because I think my instinct is that I was getting too much air out before I took the breath, so my lungs are empty by the time and then I'm gasping, and it's a bit panicky. Whereas if I go, breathe and then say almost bubble, it slows me down a bit. I can expel the last bit of it before I take the breath. And
that's right.
That seems to have improved.
So. And I think as well, if we just pause it on another breathing stroke again, right here, like, because of the way this hand cuts across in front of the head, when we're taking a breath in, we already know, look at how the legs have responded, look, by sinking really low. So don't underestimate the amount of drag that's creating for you.
And it obviously
and
is,
that adds up to the increase in workload as well. So sometimes, if you asked anybody to jump in the water and swim a lot harder than they were necessarily capable of sustaining for a long period of time, they're going to feel panicky as well with their breathing. It's going to be like, I know for sure when I'm racing, if I go off too fast, and that I'm naturally inclined to do that, if I go off too fast, give me a minute and a half, 2 minutes in, and I'm panicky with my breathing. And it's not because I'm anxious, it's because I've literally just pushed my breathing capacity a bit too far, basically, and I should have just set off a bit steadier. But it's the same sort of thing. If you're working too hard because of the technique here, that's going to be adding to that feeling of
I've been trying to slow
anxiety.
my stroke rate down a bit from the start, so that I don't get to the end. Try and just pace it a bit more. So
Interesting enough, your stroke itself is not necessarily in need of either slowing down or speeding up. And sometimes I get people for these sessions, and their stroke rate is wildly too fast, and they need to slow down. On the flip side of it, sometimes they're actually really slow and they're actually over gliding too much. Your rhythm is actually fine for your given swimming speed. The big thing though is, as I keep going back to, is just trying to get you swimming straight.
And straight line.
And with that straight line, that's actually going to help to lengthen out the stroke anyway. It's going to make you appear longer.
It's funny, when I'm swimming and I'm concentrating on it, I feel like I'm all out straight.
Yeah.
I'm like this, and then I see the video and I'm
And that's why this shot here, this bird's eye view, is sort of confronting as it can be for people. In your case, it is the shot that we need to see. That one right there, basically.
It tells the story, doesn't it?
It really tells the story, exactly. And then the hand crosses over.
Brilliant.
And then we get that there. So what we're going to do now then, we're going to jump into the water. We're going to go through a sequence of drills and exercises, primarily focused on this idea of stopping the hand crossing over, utilising those little pointy paddles as we get at that one there. Look at that one there. We're going to get those pointy paddles on, and we're going to simply try and straighten it. So, maybe later on today, if you sit down with your wife, have a glass of wine or cup of coffee or whatever it might be later on this afternoon, if you were going to say one thing, she says to you, okay, what did you find during the session? You'll say, darling, you were right. Crossing over in front of the head is what we saw in the video. But by actually isolating that one thing, all the other stuff like the scissoring with the legs, we don't need to worry about that too much. It's like a cause and effect. The cause is this
will
at the
fall
front.
into line if we correct that.
Correct. That's exactly right. And that's how to stop you getting overwhelmed with swimming.
And it's funny, I start out the first 2/3 of the lap, I think, gee, I'm actually all right at this. And then I get to the last third, and I'm kind of feel like I'm standing still, and the water's got thicker. And
It feels like it changes quite significantly there, basically. But that's the big thing that we're going to.
I look like I'm really reaching for the breath there, like I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's by the end of the first 100 meters. So imagine what it feels like after 300 or 400 meters in, and there we go. All right, so what we'll do then, let's just come out of here. We'll stop that recording.
It's funny, as a kid, I was a bit I think, really scared of swimming lessons, and so I started to fake being sick and that kind of thing to get out of them. So I never did any like basic water competence or didn't get my junior or anything like that because I just chickened out of the water. I was so scared of it. And then since then, as an adult, I snorkel quite a bit. So I'm in the water and underwater and swimming around, but not with proper technique and that sort of thing. So it's only now at 57 that I'm kind of addressing it.
So. And it's a beautiful thing, you know. I mean, I was just saying to somebody last night that, you know, what do people say when they talk about swimming? They say that, well, swimming is something you can do for your entire life. And, you know, your knees give up from playing footy or basketball or whatever it might be, sort of thing, but you can still get in there and swim. And little things like what you're doing there's a performance issue here, which is going to make it more enjoyable because you'll swim faster and you'll be able to go for longer. But also by fixing this, it's going to take pressure off the shoulders, which will mean you will truly be able to swim for life. You know, which is obviously a big goal.
I had quite a bit of neck and shoulder pain when I wasn't swimming bilaterally. That was the motivation to force myself to do it, or to the discipline. And it's made a lot of difference. Now I'm, there's other guys that I talk to that swim down at Cot. I can't really get my head around bilateral breathing. I'm thinking, I'm glad I persevered.
In many ways, the advantage you've got over some of the swimmers who've been doing the one side for so long is it's very hard habit to actually undo. But if you maybe haven't had the same sort of swimming background, learning it from scratch is much easier. Much easier. But,
I'm probably acquiring good habits from ground. From
totally.
scratch, which is
definitely. All right, so we'll just stop